Okay, we're going to get started once again. The subject that we're covering today is part 2 of a subject that we started a few months ago on the so-called Mayan calendar.
Yeah, that's right.
So so-called because there were never people who called themselves Mayan. So let's go into the subject. All right. So the Mayan civilization is considered the civilization that is the post-civilization to the Olmec civilization. The Olmec civilization, of course, you get the different books by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima and other scholars. They document the Olmec civilization as the oldest civilization, even though the people didn't call themselves Olmec. Again, why aren't the people who are doing the scholarship giving us the original names? Some of them are, I should say, but we just need more study. So in contemporary so-called Mesoamerican history, you have the Olmecs, then you have the Mayans, then you have the Aztecs, Toltecs, civilizations, and then those peter off into the conventional societies that are there now, the different brokers of Guatemala and all the other civilizations after colonization. Okay, the Mayans called themselves, they had 3 tribes, and this is how they spell it. Quiche. You see it spelled like this sometimes. Quiche. Alright. The quiche. Now this information I'm giving to you is coming from the documents called the Popol Vuh, which, you know, some of the indigenous tribes call the Chichen Castanaga, and some of the writings of the colonizing Spaniards who were coming into, Europeans who were coming into that area in the 1500s. Okay? The Quiche have 3 tribes, but when they were asked about their origins, and it was documented who they were, they said some interesting things. I'm going to read some of the stuff that they said. All right? Because I had a chance to go to Tenochtitlan, which is really Mexico City, or considered outside of Mexico City. But I had read some books prior to going down there by, one of them was by a Caucasian named Peter Tompkins. It's called The Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids.
Peter Thompson?
Peter Tompkins. Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids. And in there, he was quoting some ancient accounts from the colonizing Spaniards who were communicating with the native chiefs during that time period of the Quiche. And look at what they said. And this is his quote from his book. It actually has a whole section that deals with it. And I have the book right here, so I'm going to read from some of it. In the account that was given by this particular priest, he communicated that these then were the 3 nations of Quiches, and they came from where the sun rises. Descendants of Israel of the same language and same customs. Okay, let's write that down. Now, this is the chiefs talking. All right, I have the book right here. Again, it's called Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids. And I'll just turn to it so that I can read directly from it, page 78, where this account is being given. So you can know that I'm reading, reading from the text. You know as Egypt. Okay, so I'm going to read about this Israelite thing so you can get this down. This is on page 79 of Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids. Okay? Now, they're talking about Tupac Sultan, and they're talking about where he came from. Because literally he was coming back, or according to them, he was coming back into the land of his ancestors that they had left a long time ago. All right? Keep these themes in mind, because when we start going over the Kemet in the history of the Egyptian, the history of Tamaray is going to make sense. All right. 4 times, Sultan is said to have returned to his former home across the Atlantic, known as Salum Shittim, which Ordonez, who was a scholar interpreting this, eventually identified as the city of Tripoli. So he's trying to figure out where this guy coming from. He's saying, okay, it must be North Africa somewhere. In Phoenicia. All right. Now the reason why they're connecting them back to the Phoenician and the other things is going to go back to Kemet and the scripts and the other things. After one of these return voyages, Sultan is described as having come to a great city where a magnificent temple was under construction, which was intended to reach to heaven, but was doomed by a confusion of languages. In his constitutions, Nunez de la Vega, who was a scholar, was even more specific, saying that what Sultan saw was the Great Wall, the Tower of Babel. All right, that's their interpretation. In a manuscript written in the Quiché in 1554 by several Maya chiefs, its Spanish translator, Padre Dionisio José Chanet, had this to say: "It is supposed in the manuscript of these Quiché that the 3 great Quiche nations mentioned in particular are descendants of the tribes of the kingdom of Israel, whom Shalmaneser reduced to perpetual captivity, and who, finding themselves in the confines of Assyria, decided to immigrate." The actual text ran, "These then were the 3 nations of Quiches, and they came from where the sun rises, descendants of Israel, of the same language and the same customs." Now, why are they writing this, during this colonization phase, reporting this to these chiefs, and how is it connected to the Moorish history? Now, in the first 2012 and in other lectures, we showed how the Moorish tribes here gave the Bible in their script to Charles Thompson to translate it, and said to Charles Thompson and Elias Boudinot in his book of Star in the West that we had this book before you did. The Moorish tribes here gave the Bible in their script to Charles Thompson to translate it, and said to Charles Thompson and Elias Boudinot in his book of Star in the West that we had this book before you did, and you don't know it. Okay? And Charles Thompson was the Secretary of Congress. He lived right in this city from 1774 to 1789. He was the Secretary of the Continental Congress. He was initiated by a tribe of Moors. But I'm bringing this up because it's going to connect this Israelite history going all the way back to connecting this Mayan calendar to Moorish calendar. Okay? So that's is to connect some things. If the Quiché are saying they're of Israel, and we know that this is right before the colonization actually is taking place in the book burnings. In 1554, if they're saying that, and this is their record that they're giving to them, and it's been uninterrupted by outside forces, then we can say they must have known who Israel is. And if we can go back to the real glyphs and find out who Israel is, and show it that they are the people of Tamaray, and this dynasty was the dynasty which was Ta, which means nation, or the land, which is why they have these 3 dots. These 3 dots represent the 3rd planet. Okay, and this is the land. This is synonymous of the land and the 3rd planet, which is the earth. So you have the word for earth, the ancient word for earth is Ta. Okay, or the T, or the T. Like we say, what's this word mean? This is Latin.
Terra, land.
It means earth, land, right? But if we just change the vowels, because they take the vowels out, and then use the consonants, it's a double consonant, you have Ta-Re, the land or earth of Re. Which, you can never hide etymology. Etymology is the history of words. So all the words that we're using now are borrowed words from ancient history. And if you know the science of those words, then you can connect what's being communicated. Ta. Ta was always the name for earth. Okay? So Ta Mare was the land, the nation, the earth of the Mare. Mare is plural for Moors. All right, so connection, Israel, connection, Kishe. So where did Mayans come from? Who are the people who were Mayans? All right, it wasn't until the 19th century that this word this word is actually old. I should say that it's an old word, but the word Mayan means illusion. It means illusion. And the reason why they started using the word, because they said, check this out. Here's where the lie comes from. They said, this civilization just disappeared.
Yes, they did.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, they do that.
The people disappeared.
They said the Incas don't disappear.
Yeah, they all disappeared. And let's go even further, because it's two parts to this. One is, some people consider it far off. There are people writing books now saying they got on ships and left. Some of them did. There's some people who say they went underground into a civilization that's called Shambhala, the underground world. And some of them did. But for the most part, this perception that they disappeared says that we don't want to tell you who the people are. Okay, because they sleep and they don't need to know who they are. So we're going to call them Mayans. The people who are calling themselves indigenous now are not indigenous. They're the hybrid offspring of the bastardization and rape of Spanish priests of the black women who were in that area. And they were taught by these priests to call themselves Mayan. The people who are calling themselves indigenous now are not indigenous. They're the hybrid offspring of the bastardization and rape of Spanish priests of the black women who were in that area. And they were taught by these priests to call themselves Mayan. Okay? Nunez de la Vega and the other priests, all of them who went down into the aspect, these were military men. Okay? So the term Maya is an old term, but the term Mayan just generally means illusion because the people disappeared. No, they in the room right now in here.
To defend myself, for my brain and my mental health. The white man got the wealth, we held back. We living in hell black, a nigga can sell crack, but that ain't gonna change this thing. If you gon' bang, then bang for change, don't bang for crazy things. If not, don't bang. If you gon' ball, play the game how it should be played. Can you dribble?